Alrighty guys, Ruben here with RedScreen. I'm a filmmaker based out of Los Angeles, and in this video I want to go over my Final Cut Pro editing workflow and show you guys how I set up my projects. I've been editing on Final Cut for about 8 years now, and I've picked up a lot of little tips and tricks along the way. I feel like I've developed my own very specific workflow that works for me, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about it. I want to share how I set it up and hopefully teach you guys a couple things along the way. Alrighty guys, let's jump straight into it. So before I even start editing the footage, I'm going to make sure that all my footage is imported correctly in the right folder and renamed properly. So what I'll do is I'll create a master folder and I'll put all my files in this one folder. So if I'm ever transferring any of my footage from drive to drive, every single file is going to be in this folder and nothing's going to get lost in the process. So this is the Labryinto documentary that we're working on. So every single folder is going to be named with the same name. And I also put what hard drive it's in. So this is the SanDisk 2 terabyte. Within this master folder, I'll create a bunch of subfolders and I'll put the correct files in each one. So for example, my music's going to be in here. Final Cut Pro files in here. Sound effects. I haven't even started editing and I'm already starting to get all the music for it. I'm already starting to get logos from the client. Don't have any yet. Within the footage folder, I'll create a bunch of other subfolders and I'll put the correct footage files. So here are my Canon RAW files. As you can see, I've renamed all of the files in a batch rename. So LD stands for Labryinto documentary, C stands for Canon. And I have, let's see, 545 files. So just by looking at this folder, I already know that I have 545 raw Canon files that I've shot for the Labryinto documentary. If I'm ever importing new footage into it, I'm never going to mix up the files. I'm never going to overwrite anything. So this is, I would say, a really key step to setting up your project correctly. It's going to save you the hassle of either looking for footage or even losing your footage. All right, so once everything's set up and organized, then I'll go ahead and create my Final Cut Pro project file. I've already gotten started on this, so I'll kind of show you guys how it's set up. So as you can see, I'll mimic the same filing structure that was on the desktop level. Similarly, I'll create new sequences for all my different scenes. So there was 4 days at the festival. So I create a new project file for each day filming, you know, all the shots from the build site. I already assembled this. All of these go in here. So basically, when you start editing into these different timelines, you're gonna have everything separated. So when it goes time to edit, you can just pull from these. All right, so the next step after that would be to start assembling. And by far, I would say assembly is the longest part of the editing process. You're basically going through all your raw footage and you're finding all the best parts of each clip. I would say this takes about like 70% of my editing time is just assembling everything. It's kind of boring to start off with, but I think it just gets funner after that. All right, so let's create a new one. Yeah, they're called projects. So I like to use a custom resolution. This is kind of my standard resolution that I use. And this kind of looks the best on phones, or iPhone specifically. So you can see it full screen on an iPhone. So we'll do YouTube test. Okay. So I'm going to kind of just go through a couple of the clips and I'm going to just assemble them from beginning to end. So let's start here. All right, so I'm going to very carefully look at all the footage and start picking my favorite in and out points. And there's a skill in this too. That was a good rack focus. Out. And generally what I'm looking for is camera movement. So after the camera starts moving in one direction, I'll put my in point, and before it stops moving, I'll put my out point. Or if there's any parts of the clip that are obviously not good, I won't include those. All right, it doesn't have to be perfect on this first pass because we're gonna go and fine tune it after. Yeah, as you see, every time I'm doing camera movement, I'm trying to catch that movement as one clip. All right, started moving to the in point and out. All right, that's good enough for this clip, I would say. So as you can see, the footage is not too stable, but don't worry about that. We're gonna fix that too. I shot this with the Canon C70 in C-Log 2. It was my first time using that camera, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with it. The low light is better than I thought. It is pretty heavy though, so I was kind of fatigued when I was shooting, so it's a bit shaky, but we're gonna fix that. All right, cool. So imagine you've assembled every single thing from this day of shooting and it's all in here, okay? So what I'll do first is conform it to my timeline. So you see it's more of a widescreen that we're shooting in, and we wanna make sure all the clips are just filling the screen fully. So I'll select them all, go to spatial conform and hit fill. And the cool thing about this actually is it gives you some wiggle room so you can reframe a bit without losing any resolution. All right, so that's the first thing I'll do. And then I'll kind of go through my edits and see if my in and out points are clean. So cut that there. That'll do. And you basically want to find the smoothest parts of your shot, because if you have any really shaky parts in it, when you go to warp stabilize it, it's not gonna do a good job. So you want to obviously start off with a very steady selection, and you're gonna get the best results from that. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Next thing, I shot these in a mix of 30 frames and 60 frames per second. So if you want to just slow it down from the beginning, it'll just look cleaner. You could just select all, hit automatic speed. And you see 80% is for the shots that were shot in 30 frames per second. So this is on a 24 frames per second timeline. So when you're going from 30 frames to 24, it's going to slow it down by like 20%. And then if you're shooting in 60 frames per second, if you slow it down, it's going to be playing at 40% speed. So, all right, cool. Next thing, I just stabilize everything. And depending on what computer you have, this might take a while. I have the M1 Studio, the Mac Studio, and it goes by like super quick. But if you have an older Mac, this might take a second. All right, we should be good here. All right, see, it didn't do a good job stabilizing that because of the rack focus. So if the stabilization doesn't work, I'll just turn it off usually. It's good enough without it, honestly. All right, see how smooth that is? If you see it's not doing a good job at stabilizing, try switching the method. Try both of these. Usually one is better than the other. But I feel like when you initially stabilize, it kind of picks the best one that it thinks. All right, perfect. So everything's looking good. Look how much this stabilized. So this is before. Terrible. After. Butter. You could bump it up too if you want. If you bump it up too much, it might get a bit like wobbly and warpy. So you got to kind of just mess around and see if it's good. Like that one looked fine to me, so I don't mind bumping it up. All right, so everything's nice and ready, but it obviously looks really flat. So we're gonna fix that. So instead of going and color correcting each clip from the beginning, I'll start with a base grade, and this is pretty standard for colorists. So I'll do an adjustment layer. It doesn't come natively with Final Cut, but I'll link the plugin you can get. So everything under the adjustment layer is gonna get affected by it. All right, so this was shot in Rec 709. So first thing you wanna do is get a conversion LUT, and you're gonna wanna convert it from C-Log2 to Rec 709. So I have the Tyler Stallman LUTs, so I'm gonna start with those. All right, already you see it's looking really good. Okay, good start. I'll throw another LUT on top, and it's his film LUT. And that's gonna kind of just, yeah, it's doing a lot here. You see, this is the waveform. You see, it's getting the levels to a nice level that's not peaking. So 0 is completely black and 100 is completely white. You generally don't want it to be completely white or black, and keeping it in the middle range is gonna give you the most dynamic range. So this LUT does a really good job of saving all that. I think I wanna add a little bit of saturation on top of that. I like where that's at. Lastly, I'm gonna throw a diffusion filter on it. Do 35% here. And here's the before and after on that. So it's just giving it a little bit of a pop. So I'll kind of show you guys the before and after. And it's also very important the order that you do these. So generally, I do the conversion LUT and then the creative look. I'll add a little bit of color correction after that, and then I'll put my diffusion after that. But you guys can mess around with different orders of these and see if it works better for you. Lastly, I'll go through each clip and I'll kind of adjust the colors on each individual one. And what I start off with is just taking the exposure down. So I'll just start off with matching the exposure with just the global. And then if I want to mess with the highlights, I'll do that next. Mess with the shadows, I'll do that next. And anytime you're doing any of this stuff, just be very slight with it. Don't crank it up by a gigantic amount. Just do very small, like even -2 to -5 is a big jump. So just be very slight with your color corrections. All right, cool. So basically that's 80% of my editing is just going through the footage, prepping it, color grading it, stabilizing it, organizing it, maybe adjusting the position of it, crop in a bit. So I think what's different with my processes is how much time I spend doing this before I even start editing. And why I like doing this is when I go to edit, everything's gonna look really sick, everything's gonna look polished, and it's gonna be more fun for me to edit. I'm gonna get more into the mood. You know, a lot of traditionally people will save the color grading till the end, but I like to just prep everything from the beginning. Yeah, so I'm still working on this project. I still gotta do a couple more scenes that I gotta put in, but as I'm doing all this, I'm gathering my music, I'm gathering my files, I'm figuring out the story. So when I go to actually edit, everything's ready to go. And then, you know, I'll just put my music in, whatever it is, and get to it. Alrighty guys, I hope you guys like what you saw. If you have any questions about anything in the video, just drop it in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Trying to make more of these YouTube videos, so if there's anything else you want me to make a video on, let me know and I'll get to it. This is Ruben with RedScreen, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.